If only life were a straight path to our desired destination, wouldn't life be so much easier? Yeah, maybe. But those unexpected zigzags in our path teach us that life's tough struggles have greater purpose than we ever imagined. Stories and strategies are our focus for Season 4. Zigzag and One host, Melanie Brown, chats with courageous women who share their stories of encountering zigzags and how they fought to overcome them. Be assured their stories will inspire and encourage you. But we know warm and fuzzy feelings aren't enough to equip you to fight those challenging zigzags in your path. So, this season, our guests are joining us for another episode to share strategies, mindsets, and habits that strengthened and empowered them during their toughest seasons. Join us in declaring, zigzags may interrupt our path, but they will not detour us. We will keep moving forward.
Welcome to the Zigzag and One podcast. We're tackling a tough but important topic today, that of racial injustice. I'm glad you're joining me for my interview with Yvonne Taylor. In the month since I interviewed Yvonne, this sweet, sassy, and caring 81-year-old woman has become a fast friend. I know you'll love her too. Miss Yvonne is an integral part of the history of the civil rights movement in the United States. No, she didn't speak in front of thousands like Martin Luther King Jr. did. Nor did she refuse to give up her bus seat like Rosa Parks. You likely haven't heard of her name before, but I assure you her contribution is no less important. The civil rights movement was in full swing in 1955, but 14-year-old Yvonne wasn't paying attention to the news about activists fighting for an end to discrimination and injustice. Nor was she aware of the Supreme Court ruling in Topeka versus the Board of Education that would significantly impact her education. Until Yvonne learned she and 20 other black students would be integrating into Hoxie High School in Hoxie, Arkansas. That was 67 years ago this month. You'll hear Yvonne describe how she was treated by white students and white teachers, and how she responded during her year at Hoxie High School. MLK Jr. did something to help blacks gain equal rights. Rosa Parks did something too. Countless others did something, including Miss Yvonne Taylor. Helen Keller said it best when she said, "I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." Thank you, Yvonne, for doing something. Your brave actions and positive attitude paved the way for black students to access the same quality education as white students. It's time to share my interview with Yvonne Taylor with you. It's an honor to welcome today's guest, Miss Yvonne Taylor. You heard a little bit about her in my intro, which only gives you a glimpse into this incredible woman's story. And I have been looking forward to chatting with her. So welcome, Miss Yvonne.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
We have some interesting pieces of your past to talk about.
Okay, fine.
I want to start with where you went to school, the first part of your education. Tell me about Hoxie Colored School.
When I first started school, it was in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, because in Hoxie, they didn't have a school for Black children.
Oh.
So I started first, second, and third grade, I walked 2.5 miles to
Wow.
to Walnut Ridge. And on the days that my dad worked on the railroad, so on the days that he was working, we had to walk because they had a little bus that ran from Hoxie to Walnut Ridge. But because of the schedule, it wouldn't get us to school on time. So we had to walk. And it was fun. Okay, during the summer months, it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Winter months was a little bit different,
I would bet so.
Well, they didn't get a school right away for the Black children. We started going to the church. We started having school in a church building.
Not a bad place to have a school.
Yeah, I know. We didn't have a school, so we went in the church. And we had like 1st to 8th grade. I think when I was in the 4th or 5th, I don't remember now, but they found a building for the Hoxie children. It was deplorable. It was deplorable, but we didn't have a choice. And it was in walking distance. We had to walk took us about maybe 10 minutes to get there. But it was terrible.
Tell me about the kind of education that you received once the school building that you just mentioned. What kind of education did you receive there?
It's wonderful. That we didn't have Black school teachers in Hoxie. They had to come in for other parts of Arkansas, and we had some good teachers. But that last one was phenomenal. She, at the time, it was like about 30 of us. She made sure, she was like a drill sergeant. She made sure that we accomplished what she had assigned for us. And if there were kids that didn't have, that was having problems, she stayed with them till they met where they got where she needed them to be. So it was really good. And we didn't have indoor toilets, we didn't have running water.
Wow.
We had literature, but our books were deplorable. They were just bad. They had the stories on the end of the chapters that had exams. A lot of the questions was already filled in.
Well, of course,
So,
if they've been used and
what?
used and used.
Yeah. But you know what? That teacher always improvised. She would take the books, most of them, and she would blot out what they had written in. And then she would give it a sheet of paper, and she would number those papers, and we still had to write the questions in, But,
wow.
It was really, I enjoyed it, but she was sort of like my mother. She
Yes.
didn't give up, and like most the other teachers that we had before, they was kind of sit at the desk most of the time, but she didn't do it. She always walked around and made sure that everybody was doing what they supposed to do. So, and another thing, what I would like to say, when we left that school and went to that white school,
Yes.
our kids rate higher grades than the white kids.
That is very amazing and interesting.
They did.
Given what you've just described, how it's it's deplorable, it's used books,
Yeah.
but yet somehow each of the 30 of you,
she made a, just
you rose above.
She made a way for us. And Melanie too, she bought a lot of books for us. Miss Trotter was she was phenomenal. I loved her.
I was going to mention her name, but you just did, Miss Trotter.
Yes.
As part of your books, you talk about her and you talk about what an amazing woman she was.
The rest of our teachers would tell the school board about what we needed, but they wasn't persistent. But Miss Trotter was. She was very intelligent too, small, little short. She was really cool, and she made a lot of difference in my life.
That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward a little bit, because now we're at the point you are going into 9th grade. You were excited about going to Booker T. Washington High School.
Yeah.
Because your older sisters had been going there and had great experiences.
Yeah, they did.
And now, well, sorry, you're going to be going somewhere else because of a court decision And it's a very familiar one to a lot of people. As an educator, that is a court decision that we studied when I was in school way back then. It's the landmark case that was in 1954, Topeka versus the Board of Education. And in that ruling, the Supreme Court justices ruled unanimously that racial segregation of children in public schools was unconstitutional.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They did that in 1954.
Yes, and it established the precedent that separate but equal education and other services were not equal at all.
Right.
And based on your description of your school, it would seem that way.
Yeah, right.
In a deplorable building, lack of materials, no running water or restroom facilities.
No.
I can't imagine a situation where a white school would have had that at that time period and it been acceptable.
Melanie, I'm glad that I can talk about this now.
I am too.
For years, I could have been speaking. I have started speaking, but I wouldn't because I look back and think like when it rained, we had to tread mud to go to the bathroom. And you take a 11, 12, 13-year-old kids and then younger than that, I wouldn't even drink water. We wouldn't even drink water because we didn't want to have to walk in that mud, go to the bathroom.
Oh my.
When I was excited, I was excited about going to Booker T. Washington because my sister was talking about all the things that they did, and everything. We didn't know anything about it because our parents kept it from us about the segregation, the integration thing. When I graduated from the 8th grade, and my parents finally told us what was going on. I was, I was really upset.
You're old enough at that point to really understand the disparity between what the white schools were getting, and now it's been pointed out and decided by the Supreme Court that the schooling that you've had your entire life has been less than.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're old enough to comprehend that and like walk down a few steps and know what that means.
Exactly.
I want to stop there for a second and point out something that you had in your book. Your parents said, Yvonne, and the names of your two sisters, you guys are going to be going to Hoxie High School, and you're going to be part of the group.
Yes.
Was it 30 or 21 students?
Well, no, it was 25 that registered.
Okay.
But then several, they dropped the enrollment.
Okay. So it ended up being 21. Is that correct?
21. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Excellent.
21.
So 21 Black students were going to be going to this new white high school based on the Supreme Court decision in Topeka versus Board of Education. Your parents sat you down, described what was happening.
Yes.
And I loved this, that your parents said, and I'm going to read it straight from your book. Just the act of attending an all-white school, girls, is not going to make you successful. Only studying hard and retaining what you learned will determine your growth.
Exactly.
You are no better or no less than anyone else.
Yes.
You should never let anyone's opinion define who you are or what you may become.
That's right.
It was a year's time that you were at Hoxie High School, and we're going to dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me about the relationships that you had with the white kids in your community prior to going into Hoxie High School because of the Supreme Court's decision that schools must be integrated. Tell me about those children.
It was good because our parents did not allow us to have a lot of kids at home because they said if anything happened in the home, everybody's going to be held responsible. And they didn't want confrontations with anybody else. So we had white friends that came over, several that came over, that they were Christian people like my parents, and they were good kids like we were. We were good kids. We had to be. We didn't have no choice. They would come over, we would play. I found out that we really had to go to this school. I thought, well, I had these three friends, well, these two friends that I was close to. I'm on, we're the same age. We're gonna probably won't be in the same class, but we're friends. Girl, when when I entered that school, they were just like the rest of them. It was just like they didn't know me. They kind of speak, and I would go, "Hi," and they'd go, "Hello."
You assumed because of the great connection and friendship that you had with those white girls, that they would act the same way at that school, and they didn't.
You know what, Melanie? I threw my head up, but you're not stealing my integrity. Well, I was taught. I'm going to speak. If you don't speak back, the choice on you. I'm going to speak, and I did. But it was just like quite, spread the Red Sea. When I would walk down the hall, they would go to one side.
Wow, I just got that visual in my head that you're talking about spreading the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Or parting the Red Sea.
Well, that's what it was like.
Wow. That had
was for a year.
Emotionally been so difficult to not just fall into a whole ball of tears.
Yeah.
And to continue on your day, and then to show up day after day after day.
But you know what? Mary and Ruben's word kept ringing in my ears. Honestly,
your parents' words. And throughout your book, let's go ahead and just I want to mention the name of your book in case listeners would like to get a copy of it. It's called Mommy, Daddy, and Me by Yvonne E. Taylor. And in your book, you reference your mom and dad, things they said, expectations they had, and how they raised your family with Christian values and expectations, as we mentioned before, about what people say about you, how they treat you is not a reflection of you. It's all about what God says about you. Yeah. And I want to unpack that in the next episode, where we talk about the mindset that they put in you that you have continued on.
Right.
Do you be willing to do that?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
So let's get back to how all this started taking place. This wasn't a peaceful integration. The 21 students showed up. The Black students showed up to school. They did their part by participating, but the community and those outside the community were not happy about this at all.
No, they weren't. The first 2 weeks, it was fine. After the first 2 weeks, they had cameras there. And we knew, we watched TV. We knew the cameras were taking pictures and all, but we didn't know that were representing from Life magazine. And the first 2 weeks, it was okay. But the second week, on the 14th, that's when the trouble started. There had people just had ganged around, and the older students went in first. Kids, they was little, so we didn't see all the commotion. We went in. When we came out, then there was the kids. They would spit on the kids. They would throw rocks on the kids. And some of these people were doing this was adults.
Wow.
They were adults. They weren't only children. But what happened is Life magazine hit the newsstand.
Mm-hmm.
And they shared this picture of Freddie Sue and Norma, this little white girl, and they weren't going to have that. So the white people from Pulaski County the deputy sent 2 representatives to Hoxie School to have signatures to follow board members. That's what started, baby. Melanie, I'm glad I can talk about this night, but it was so bad. One evening, we came home from school, and we had just finished dinner, and my 2 sisters had just finished doing the dishes. Well, somebody passed by and shot through our window. It was to the bedroom window, and the bedroom window would go straight to the kitchen. And they had just left to come to the living room to watch TV. My dad was outside, and he came in, and he was horrified.
Of course he was. They were attacking your family, and not just with words.
Of course, mother cried, and we were scared, but we didn't take it as bad as my dad. They claimed that they had some suspects, but that's all we ever knew. Mother and dad never did tell us anything else. See, I did not know if it was done because of the integration, because one evening, Donna and Deborah and I was walking home, and there were some white boys in a car, and they was trying to flirt with us. And Dawn, my younger sister, had a little foul mouth.
Uh-oh.
And she told them where to get off.
Uh-oh.
I couldn't say any more about it, but that's what I was thinking. Maybe that's what happened.
Right.
But then after that, they started threatening Mr. Vance and the school board. And
I wasn't familiar with the Hoxie High School integration. I was much more aware of Little Rock and the Little Rock Nine. Part of what you said a moment ago about the representatives from another county coming to create a boycott and get a petition signed.
The American White Council, that's what it's called.
Yeah, the American White Council. That happened after the Life magazine expose. I noticed in my notes and my research is that this incident that you're talking about after everything kind of blew up is that the Hoxie High School integration was the first to be met with active resistance. It wasn't that Hoxie was the first school to be integrated.
Right.
And I found that so interesting that others had gone smoothly or relatively smoothly.
The reason they went smooth, the reason it went smoothly because it was not publicized.
There you go. That's where I was going with this.
See, they did. They kept it quiet.
That's exactly where I was going with this, Miss Yvonne. The nation was unaware. And then when Life magazine published that article, it just like stoked that fire. It had been kind of brewing underneath. And that's when you saw people's true colors. Yeah.
Caleb Phillips of New York Times had written about this in the first place, about the integration and Hoxie as the focal point. Okay, a battle in the test tube. The scenes of the battle was Hoxie in Lawrence County, a small rural county. He did that, and his dispatchers turned this isolated rural town into the focal points of the nation.
Wow.
Let me tell you, those school board members, 2 of those was friends of my father's. They were some brave dudes. That they didn't only do that because of what the Supreme Court had brought down. They said they could no longer fund separate schools. Well, they couldn't be too much. What we had, I mean, wasn't nothing but
what
a building.
What were they spending the money on?
We didn't have a building, girl. We had wood stores.
Right.
You know, we didn't have indoor toilets, so what was they spending the money on? So we laughed about that. I know they put a noose in Mr. Vance's yard. They stuck to their decision, but it got so bad, it had to close. You know, we had to close in August, but.
Close what?
We had to close the school.
Which school?
They closed the school because of the threats against the Black community and school board. Also, they put in injunction against the segregationists.
So you're saying that the Hoxie High School that was now mostly white, 21 Black students had to close because of all of the turmoil.
Yeah, they had to close.
How long did they have to close?
We closed in August, and they did the injunction against the segregationists. And then we opened back up October the 14th, 1955.
Wow, I did not read that. That's a long period of time.
In August, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Okay, in August, they closed the school because of the violent threats against the Black community and school board members. Also, the injunction that the school board was seeking against the favoring segregationists. And we closed August 1955. The injunction was granted after the U.S. Department of Justice became involved. And on October 14th, 1955, the school resumed.
Now, this is all the students, Black and white students, did not go to school during that time period.
No, not during that time. It closed.
I know that y'all didn't have Zoom back then and did education over the internet.
No, because we didn't have that.
What kind of learning happened during that period?
We didn't do anything. Now, we had split terms because of the farmers farmed cotton, and they chopped cotton and picked cotton. But this wasn't related to that. This was related to the violence.
So were you scheduled to not be in school during that time period anyway?
No, we didn't do anything. No.
So none of the students in Hoxie were
No,
going to
not-
school during that time period.
No, no one.
Wow.
The school closed.
As an
Nobody went.
educator, that's
That's right.
huge.
That's right. That is
That's
true.
huge.
That is true. And when it reopened, the violence, the threats, and the calls kept coming, but they were not allowed on the school ground.
Got it.
Because before they was on the campus, and they
Wow.
would come on the campus.
Let me ask you this. Either before the school closing or after the school closing, during the school day, did you feel concerned about your safety?
Yeah, of course.
Tell me what it was that you experienced that made you feel threatened. And then I want to hear about your mindset. Because you didn't go home, you couldn't go home.
See, we had the fear of that. We had to walk because my dad was at work. We didn't have a way
Right.
to walk. And we didn't know if they were going to do
Ambush
something
you.
to us. They would call us names.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't know what was going to happen.
Did you have Black classmates? Were they physically assaulted?
No.
Okay,
no,
that's good.
Not that I know of. I
That's
know my
good.
sisters weren't. My sisters weren't.
Tell me about your mindset when you're trying to learn. You're trying to learn. And all of this is going on
You know what?
around you.
You know what? Let me tell you something, Melanie. It didn't bother me. That's why my grades were good, is because I had to. And one thing I'm like thinking about, you know better. I'm saying to myself, you think you're all this, you know better than I am. You have to kind of integrate it, what in my head, what my parents told me.
Yes.
And let me tell you something. I had Miss Maxine Bracy. I had Mr. O'Neill Callum was my teacher. I had Mrs. Robert Taylor. So I was fine. Because
They took care of you in a sense.
they did. I felt alone. I knew I had somebody that cared. I knew I had somebody that I could go talk to, and they genuinely cared.
What an amazing testament to the power of teachers.
It was. You talking about a mindset. Oh, I'm in Mr. Callum's room. I'm going to Miss Taylor. I knew that I was going to go somewhere that I feel comfortable.
And safe.
And safe. Yeah, and safe.
I'm just curious if the 21 of you ever met together and just encouraged each other, supported each other.
No. We didn't do that. We didn't do that. When we would go home, we went home alone. My dad made sure that we had things to, after we did our chores, we had things to play on, we had things to do. So he made sure that we were occupied.
Okay.
So, and then our home was a safe place.
Because your parents said those powerful words about who you are and what your identity is and how the color of your skin is going to be something that people point out and treat you differently because of. They prepared you and they built you up. Again, we're going to talk more about that in the next episode. So let's get to the end of this one. And I wanted to talk about the fact that you went to Hoxie High School for how long?
A year, 1 year. Couldn't take it anymore.
Well, I was going to ask, was there an option for you to continue?
No, I wasn't going back there under any circumstance.
Did any of the other students go back?
Yeah, they did.
Okay. Tell us briefly why you chose not to go back.
I didn't want to go back because I felt alone in that school. I was ignored. I was just like by myself. I wasn't going to go back. I was not going to have to hype myself up every day to accept being treated like I was being treated.
Yes.
You understand? I wasn't going to do that.
Yes,
I felt alone. I went to work. But make no mistake, my education didn't stop there.
Ooh, I love that. Make no mistake. Miss Yvonne, love that.
But you know what? I was not going to be defeated. I was not going to be defeated. I was not going to be. It took me a while, but I got there.
So you did not complete high school at Hoxie High School.
No, I didn't.
You worked, and then later you got your GED.
Yes, I did. I got my GED in St. Louis.
Fantastic. How old were you when that happened?
my 20s.
I want to end with two things. Tell me what your one takeaway would be that you would want the listeners to remember about your experiences as a Black young girl being integrated into an all-white Hoxie High School.
I would have to say God.
And tell me why.
Why? Because I know that I'm just as good as anybody else. That he loved me just like he loved them. Also, that I have to say God and my parents. My faith kept me there.
So if we kind of connect some dots, if a listener is really struggling with something, whether it's racial strife or anything else, what would you want them to know about dealing with very challenging circumstances?
Not only all I can say is prayer to get through that year.
Mm-hmm.
I prayed to God, and I believe my faith had no anybody can tell me anything different.
I would agree. And I think that God got you through
I'm
that.
gonna tell you, that's when I really buckled down and started reading the Bible and studying.
Well, you needed some other outside force to connect with that understood what you were going through.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know. I don't want to start crying, but I didn't know anything else but God.
That is beautiful. It really is. And it speaks to the power of God being with us during the most challenging times of our lives.
Exactly. You know what? I had scriptures, girl, that I read. I was a teenager.
Yes.
I was a teenager. Wasn't even but I was believing what I read. I was believing it.
Let's talk about one last thing. And this is probably going to be a very challenging thing in that it's a current topic, and I would love your input on it. Do you have one thing that you believe would help? And I know it can't eradicate the racial strife and tension. Do you have any thoughts about something that you believe could make a difference?
Love.
Ooh, yes. Tell me.
Love. Let me tell you something. Love. If there were more love,
yes, ma'am,
things would be a lot different.
I would agree.
There's not enough love. There's not enough parents sitting down with their children and teaching them, because it all started home.
Yes,
I'm gonna tell you, it all started home. And the Bible doesn't lie at all. When you train it, you have to train the child, train them while they're. I know how we were. I know how we were trained. People thought, oh, they think the Barksdales think they did. The Barksdales think they did. No, they didn't. And at the time, we felt like, well, I felt like I didn't have a childhood.
Because your parents were strict.
We had to walk right, talk right, sit right, stand right, So, but I look back at her now, girl, let me tell you something. I live with love. If there was no love in the world, it would be much better. That
is a beautiful way for us to end this episode. I'm stewing on what you're saying and seeing how that could permeate.
Remember I told you I was going to keep it real?
I love that you kept it real. That's what I was hoping for. Miss Yvonne, would you take us out by sharing the Zigzag in One podcast tagline?
When life zigs and zags, keep moving forward.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, you're welcome.
It's been wonderful.
I enjoyed it also. Thank you.